never looked bad. It was something I never wanted to see again. My parents had just church meetings in the house, and this was when I was about 16 and back in the mid-70s. And so we had this room that was a prayer room, and there was 4 of us sitting in this room. And there was no light on in the room, but there was a light that casted from the kitchen down the hall, which kind of gave a little light in the room, you know. So I don't know so much that I was praying as much as I was just kind of meditating. I was sitting there with my eyes open, staring at the doorway, and just meditating on love and, you know, everything positive. And all of a sudden, this thing showed up in front of the door. And it was black. And I mean blacker than black. Black doesn't even describe how dark it was. And it had a cone head, and the head of it was like, the best I can describe it, like a doll texture.
Weird. That's weird.
The fleshy color. And you know how like an egg yolk, if the chicken is starting to form, you can see where the eyes are and the beak and that.
Yeah, oh
well,
yeah.
That's how the face of this thing was.
Oh, God.
You could see where the eyes were forming, the nose, the mouth, the ears.
Oh.
And
God.
my skin's crawling just even thinking about it.
So is mine, but I don't really want you to stop either. I'm conflicted.
And I went from meditation to prayer at that point. I was like,
yeah, I bet.
No. Because I think it was looking for somebody to enter.
Well, what makes you say that?
Because it didn't come in the room. And I think we were all in the same unity. And it couldn't find a place to enter.
Oh, God.
And it took off. I mean, it just dissipated, you know. Well, I didn't want to tell anybody about it because it just, you know, it just scared me so bad. So a couple hours later, my sister was the one that was sitting next to me on the couch. And she said, I saw something really weird. And she saw the same thing I saw.
She described it in the same way?
Yeah.
At the same moment?
Same thing.
Oh my God. I mean, now I understand why when you hear something crazy, you say, oh God, oh my God. Because that's just Linda. Oh, okay, all right. Well, we should get Dark's response to this, don't you think?
Linda, let me ask you a question. Is your family Pentecostal?
No, Southern Baptist.
Okay, all right, gotcha. That's just freaky and weird, man. That's creepy. Like that's scary.
Yeah, and I've never seen
anything?
it again. Don't want to see it again.
Did it have a smell to it?
No. Mm-mm. But you know what just really freaked me out was the face of it because of you could see where it was forming, but it hadn't formed.
Sort of an embryonic nature to it that's just even creepier.
Yeah, and I always wondered if it had entered something, is that what gives it the power to form into the bigger power that it could have? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. God, you are one strong lady, Linda. You really, really are. Oh my God. Well,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. I just wanted to put that story out there. I thought it was a good one for the show.
It is, and we very much appreciate that. As creeped out as I am, I greatly thank you for that. Dark, this stuff is going on with too many people out there to just dismiss it as there's nothing going on.
There's no way you can dismiss any of it. I mean, people having these encounters all throughout time. There's no way to dismiss it. People can say, oh, you're crazy, or you're hallucinating, or you're seeing things, but there's no logical way to dismiss what people are saying. I find it highly offensive when people do try and dismiss other people's experiences, because at the end of the day, you have no way of protecting yourself or gathering the proper information to protect yourself if you're not open to listening to people's encounters. So I think it's very brave of her to share that, considering that it probably scared her. I can tell when she started talking that whatever it was, it shook her. You could hear her voice trembling when she started to talk.
Mm-hmm.
So she definitely experienced something.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, it makes me realize that there is an evil out there. Night before last, thank you, Linda, very much for the call. You're a sweetheart. It reminds me of night before last. I had Dr. Lynn on, and we were talking about her book, and the conversation really became about evil and demons and all of this. And are they real? Could they possibly be real? And looking at this sort of a thing with a scientific mind that demands physical proof, we've been doing that for a long time, and it isn't getting us anywhere. And it isn't getting the experiencers, the witnesses anywhere either. We got to take a different approach, because there's too many stories. They're too similar, and some of them are people making things up, and others are things that are truly happening. I mean, I've seen some things. I've conjured up some things. I've seen things happen to other people that dabble in the dark side. I mean, most of those people are dead. And I'm not joking around. They're no longer with us. They die in mysterious circumstances. And so the old idea that the human soul is caught in between an invisible war between good and evil is very interesting. And if these demons are real, then you have to go to the other side of that, Dark, and consider then, and this might offend some people, I don't know, but you have to consider then, is God real? Because you can't have one without the other.
Well, the truth of the matter is, those people who are true practitioners of dark arts, they know God is real. It's only the people who don't practice that have doubts. The people who really, really practice that I've spoken to, they know that God is real. They just choose another route. And that's a part of them having free will. That's their choice. And they know the consequences of those actions. They know what it can provoke and what they can conjure, and they make those decisions. So at the end of the day, it's clearly obvious that there's a war between good and evil. It's clearly obvious that, we as human beings are conscious, that experience the world through our body, and God gave us eyes, ears, and a mouth in order to experience the environment around us. And we know that there are 12 to 13 different dimensions that are outside of our sight and our realm of understanding and sensory realm. Mm-hmm. And in spiritual warfare, those are the dimensions in which battles are fought. Like I've told you before, young kids who are around me see lions with me. They'll tell me, oh, you have a lion with you. You have 2 lions. That one girl told me I had 4 lions. Mm-hmm. And I prayed on that one night, and then God just revealed to me that, no, you have lions that walk with you because you are a lion. You are a lion that roars and attacks things that I send you after. And I was like, okay. Like, all right. And that explains how I ended up being Dark Waters. Because think about it. There was no way. I went to school for engineering. I'm an entrepreneur. I mean, not like, people say, oh, I'm an entrepreneur. They don't have any business. No, I'm the real deal. But this is one of the things that I do. And every time I try and stop doing it, I get forced to do it again. And it's like, no, this is what I want you to do. So I just think that there's a good side, there's a dark side, and there's a light side, and people have to make a choice. I make clear what my choice is, and people have to make that choice, and then they have to live their life, because that's what they have the option of doing.
Well, the funny thing about choices is that there are consequences for the decisions that we make, and I think we're trying to conveniently forget nowadays that there are consequences, but they are, and they're real, and it's common sense. You ask your heart what is the right way to go, and your heart will tell you. Those who go to the dark side, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing when they do that, and they know that it's a mistake inherently within them. They absolutely know. And then they continue to tell this lie to themselves, oh, it's okay, I'm special, I can throw this evil around because of whatever reason, fill in the blank. And then we always see the consequences come into play. On the phone, you're on the air with Dark Waters. Welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning. It's Adrian. Hi. Speaking of electronics, Heather, I was listening to the show on the phone. I was second in line, I guess, and then it went back to the music, and then it hung up on me.
Yeah, well,
Don't know why.
because, the reason I was saying that, I just didn't want to take up airtime with it. But right when Dark and I were talking about that stuff, my phone system comes up and says, oh, the program has been updated. You have to refresh it in order to continue using it. And I just thought to myself, well, great timing. That's fantastic. I'm probably going to lose whoever is on hold right now, and I guess I did. So I'm very sorry about that.
Oh, that's okay.
Right after I ask for calls, and then you guys call in, and then I just go ahead and hang up on you. So thank you, Ring Central, or maybe it's possessed. I don't know, but I'm really sorry about that.
Well, no, that's good news, because I'm glad it's not paranormal, because I just had to run a couple of quick things.
Well, how do we know it isn't?
You told that story.
We don't know that it isn't.
The one you warned us about?
Mm-hmm.
So I was trying not to think about that black thing with the red eyes, trying to stay really cool about it, and because you told us we should do a cleansing or pray after it or something.
Mm-hmm.
So you were starting the second story, and I didn't do anything. I was just sitting here, and my dog's sitting in front of me, and she starts swinging her head around like she's following something in a figure eight almost, and then her head goes almost in a complete circle, and I can see her eyes. And then something rattled the jar of, like, spatulas and ladles, whatever, on top of my microwave. And then something flew by me, like, horizontally. And then the energy changed. So, yeah, I went and got my sage and frankincense and sandalwood, said the Lord's Prayer. I just thought I'd mention that. But you know what I was thinking? And I never really thought of it this way, because you warn us about things when we're listening over the phone. That might fall under the collective consciousness category. Would you think so?
Is that a question for me, the collective consciousness? No. The story I told is one of the most powerful entities that there is out there. And every time I tell that story, that's what happens to people. Stuff literally happens in people's houses every time. I mean, it happens. And you have to realize this time I warned you guys ahead of time that you need to pray. Normally, I don't warn anybody, so it's not like I'm presupposing anything. I've warned you this time because I learned from the last 2-3 times that I need to warn people. But prior to this, I would just tell a story, and then all hell would break loose on people, and I'll start getting phone calls and emails. The first time it happened, I thought people were playing with me. I was like, get the hell out of here. Y'all lying. And then it was email after phone call, and producers and show hosts, and I was like, holy crap, I need to warn people. So I don't think it's collective consciousness. I think it's this particular entity. When I talk about it, it does that. Like, literally, the air outside is normal. The breeze is blowing again. The crow is going that you guys heard, because that moment has passed. But when I was in the moment of telling that series of stories, everything changed here. And I'm literally sitting outside. Everything, like, you couldn't hear a car in the distance. There was no sound whatsoever.
Yeah, and I had my mic turned off at that exact moment, but I occasionally hear taps and sounds inside the studio, and I've been trying to figure out what these sounds are, Dark, for since 2016. I've had these weird noises, and it sounds like somebody's rattling my door, and I haven't heard that in a long time. Of course, I use a directional microphone, so the microphone doesn't often pick that up, and my vocal processor is tuned in such a way to not pick up background noise and things like that, because we don't want background noise on the show. But as I had my microphone turned off and I'm listening to you, oh, there's taps on the air conditioner in here, the doors moving, and you know, I'll tell you something really weird. Normally, I have an air conditioner in this room. Now, that's in addition to the air conditioner that cools off the house, because there's so much equipment in here, so many computers, so many fans, so much going on. We have to have an air conditioner to keep the room cool. And that thing has been blowing since 8 o'clock Pacific time, my time, and it is warm in here. That has never happened. That's never happened in the whole time. I do the show bundled up. It gets that cold in here. I joke around and I call my studio the meat locker because it's that cold. And my producer can back me up. He's been in here and it is freezing. You have to wear a jacket and socks and slippers to stay warm in here and have some hot coffee and everything. Not right now. And I bet my producer listening to this, he's probably got a furrowed brow going, what? It's warm in there? It's never warm in this room, but it is. As soon as you started telling that, it got warm in here and it stayed that way. It's not, I got the air conditioner on right now. It's just blowing cold air. It doesn't seem to be making much difference in the room. It's weird. So there is that. Very strange.
Well, in this case, I definitely know it's not the collective consciousness. I know because I've done it, I've told it a number of times, and every time this is what happens.
Man. Well, I'm glad you warned us ahead of time, but to me, I mean, I like dangerous things. I know that makes me a little bit crazy. Thank you, Adrian, for letting us know what happened at your house. I always welcome your calls to the show. Really sorry about the, are you kidding? It's telling me it needs to be refreshed one more time. Well, I hope nobody's on hold. Yeah, this thing is just wanting to be refreshed and updated. And you know what's really weird is it told me there's an update coming, but not until tomorrow. So when she said, well, I'm glad it's not paranormal, I'm thinking, how do you know that how do we know it isn't paranormal? How do any of us know? So I hope this thing is working now, and I hope there's no more updates to it, but it is certainly open and available, ready to take your call. And we are quickly coming up on a break. But let me see here. There's a couple of interesting things. You may like this, Dark, and may want to comment when we come back from the break. Jason says, in 2002, my friends and I were in a golf course late at night, 2 or 3 in the morning, and I saw 2 green glowing eyes looking at me from about 15 to 20 feet away. We all saw it. It chased us over a mile back to my house, and here's the creepy part. We couldn't make out a body, just 2 glowing green eyes, it seemed to be. So we'll head to a break, and you can kind of contemplate that over the break there, and we'll talk about it when we come back. I do appreciate this interaction from all of you out there. That's what this show is meant to be, and what a night! God, what a cool night we're having. You're in the right place, my friends. Keep it right here. You know, I don't know. Has anybody ever reported a smell from that story that you told?
Yep, that's one of the reasons why she moved out of that studio apartment, is because she couldn't get rid of this foul smell. She said it was worse than a dead body being in the apartment. She said it was just this stench. And the way she described it was, when the scent got into your nose, it festered in your throat.
Yes.
She said it went through your nose and it set in your throat. And she said it felt like her throat would expand and it would make her nauseous. That's why I said it. You know, it's really a story that you have to pray on it. Like during the breaks, that's what I've been doing. Like I've been sitting there praying. I'm serious, because it's one of those ones that you really have to pray on. It's insane. But to address the guy's story in a looking glass with the green eyes, you know, normally when we talk about like illuminated green eyes or green eyes shine, let me be very specific, because people like to say, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Green eyes shine is normally Bigfoot. Self-illuminating, floating green eyes with no body, I have no earthly clue what the hell that is. I don't know what that is. But
well, you can add it to your collection.
If you weren't shining a light on it, and it was just these illuminated green eyes chasing you, that's pretty freaking weird, bro. That's like really, I would love to hear the end of the story and what happened when they got home. I would love to know what happened then, if anything else happened after that. So if he can reply to that, I would love to know that.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to know what they were doing before that happened, too.
Yeah, why in the hell were y'all on the golf course at 3 o'clock in the morning anyway?
Yeah, I know, right? I hesitate to make any assumptions there. And here's my producer. Yeah, he's backing me up he sent a message in the Looking Glass. He says, every show you've done that I've been there, or any time I'm there and we're working in the studio, we always have our sweaters on because it's freezing in there. He says that is very weird, and the temperature really still hasn't come down much. It's very warm in here. I'm like wanting to shed so I'm not getting too hot while I'm doing this. Okay, so Adrian, Connecticut has another comment for us. Regarding blue glowing eyes, you may want to check out Aztec Gods. She's probably referring to last night. Marcus Leader mentioned these powerful beings, some possibly demonic, that had amazing blue eyes. He did not mention that they glowed, but it's a place to start. And, we can go right back to Dr. Lynn once again. She also found that demons are more commonly seen with these very striking blue eyes. Now, she was talking about, it being rare in ancient times for humans to have blue eyes, and so people became suspicious of that. But there are talismans, they probably sell them in New Orleans, talismans that people still wear to prevent the evil eye, and it turns out the evil eye is actually the blue eye. So I don't know if that's helpful to you at all.
No, it makes a little bit of sense, and I put that out there without the rest of the story. The rest of the story was that this young lady lives on a property where someone did some very dark magic in a particular spot, and that spot where they did the magic has never grown. Nothing's grown in that circle since, and that's where this activity happened. So it could be something demonic. Like I said, I never put out the whole thing because I don't want people to be like, oh, it's demonic. I don't want anybody to take it, but that's just a little bit of confirmation as to what I was thinking it was.
Oh,
and that gave confirmation.
That reminds me of a story that I heard about something called the Devil's Circle or something like that. God, I wish I had that story in front of me. It's a urban legend. It's a real place that exists, and apparently it's this great big circle, huge circle in the woods somewhere out there down south. I forget where. I want to say Tennessee or Kentucky or Alabama or something like that. Anyway, it's this great big circle in this particular spot in the woods, and people go out there and they camp next to it. And the old legend is if you put something in the middle of the circle and then you fall asleep, you'll wake up and it's out of the circle. And people put refrigerators and old washing machines and ice chests and anything, and they wake up and it's thrown out of the circle. But the other thing about that Devil's Circle, and I know that's not the actual name of it, it's close, but that's not it, but nothing will grow inside of it. It's just a dead spot of land. And it makes me wonder.
Yeah, I would not
why.
be going out there messing with that. I would not do that.
No, you don't want me to give you the directions out to it?
Hell no.
Devil's,
I don't want nothing to do with that.
Devil's Stomping Grounds or something like that, or the Devil's Grounds, or I don't know. These kind of stories always grab my attention. I don't know. I guess I got a morbid fascination with it or something, but I thought you would find that interesting. Let's go to North American Skype, and you're on the air with Mr. Dark Waters. Welcome to the show.
Heather, my queen, this is Marcus in Sublimity, Oregon. We're alive, believe it or not.
Well, so are we, and thank God for that. We'll try to make it through tomorrow then, too, right?
Right. Well, we've been in isolation quarantine for over a week now. So our residents here at the home are limited to not just the one floor they happen to be on, but their rooms, unless they have compelling reason to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And that is stress enough. But today we lost power at 10 a.m. and didn't get it back until 5:15. Apparently, a delivery truck according to legend, hit and took out 3 power towers. And it took them over 7 hours to get power back. And watching my battery die on my iPad, no power, no light, no Wi-Fi, no connection, no TV, no telephone. I got to admit, I was slowly going out of my mind.
Yeah, it's serious what we're going through, isn't it?
I have no idea why this guy flipped over or why they lost power, but things are getting weird, honey.
Yeah, they are, and that's why I keep talking about it. I know some people might be tired of it, but being tired of it really isn't an option right now. I mean, I was really struck back when I went into town and I saw what I saw there. So is Dark Waters giving you at least a run for your money tonight?
I am delighted to meet the gentleman. Thank you, sir, for being here, adding your light, and reassuring us that you think that's strange. Here, hold my beer. I've got a story to tell you.
Okay.
And I have to admit, the ones that you've collected are, shall we say, eye-opening.
Well, thank you. You said you had a story to share?
The inexplicable, icing on the cake. Since I've been here, this particular building was built in the 1800s sometime by an order of nuns. The order of nuns, like so many others, gradually diminished in time, so that by about 50 years ago, the founder of this building was able to buy the property and erect a 3-story nursing bed facility with 214 beds. But like something out of, I can't recall the name of the movie, they were a little remiss about removing the graves of the existing decedents.
Mm-hmm.
So
Wow.
this building was erected on or possibly over graves of nuns and early pioneers.
Great. Yeah, that always
Yeah.
works out for people.
And during times of stress like now where the power is gone, you see shadows occasionally flitting around and you can't quite catch them out of the corner of your eye. There's also supposed to be the ghost of a 12-year-old boy who haunts the place. Doesn't interact with the residents, but he's there and he's looking. So we've got some very uneasy making company at night.
Wow. Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
God, no wonder
That's
you
terrifying.
listen to this show. No wonder. My God. Wow.
Compared to everything else going on in my life, my dear, you are an island of sanity and normalcy. Thank you.
Well, it's the least I could do compared to what all of you have done and still continue to do for me. Oftentimes I wish I could do more. And then my producer says, no, you don't. You're not going to wear yourself out this time. Again, it's another one. Add it to your growing collection, Dart. You're never, ever going to run out of stories because, it happens to too many people all around the world. I bet you it's not just him in the home that he lives in with other seniors. If that's where the building is, I bet they all have stories of contact. And I don't know about you, I mean, there must be convalescent homes in Louisiana, in New Orleans, and those places tend to have some bone-chilling, blood-curdling stories of the supernatural.
No, they do. They absolutely do. And I just want to encourage you, brother, to stay strong. And I think we'll get through this as a nation. I think things are going to turn around. But take good care of yourself. And just if you can't, get on the internet, make sure you grab your book. And I tell people all the time, right now is a time where there are no distractions for people. There's no stupid sports on with LeBron James dunking the ball, running around acting like he's God. There's no football. There's no anything. So now is the time to really just kind of get with yourself. And if there's something you want to learn or something you want to read, it's the perfect time. That's the way to stay sane in a time like this. Is use that time for something that you've been wanting to do. So take advantage of it. It's kind of creepy and weird when the power goes out. And I don't understand how 3 poles could go down. Me being a transmission line design engineer who dealt in designing power lines and distribution lines, it really makes no sense for 3 poles to go down. You hit one.
Yeah.
Maybe if it's a distribution line, you may take down the other. But normally, those poles they're designed for if someone has a normal car accident. Now, if you hit with an 18-wheeler, then yeah, that's a whole other story. That will take down 3, 4 poles. But a delivery van won't take them down at all. It may knock one over, but it shouldn't take that many hours to get the power on. But again, we got people scared to go to work now because they think they're going to choke to death in the middle of the street. So you never know what's going on.
Yeah. Well, I know it's a bad virus, and I know it's unpredictable, and that's what's freaking people out. But it isn't the Black Plague. I shouldn't even say that because that might be minimizing the situation, and I shouldn't do that. I appreciate the call.
No.
Why? Why do you say that?
Because in America, we really have to grow up. So the truth of the matter is 350 million Americans. That's not including the illegal aliens that are here hiding in the shadows.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure if we got to 1,000 people dead yet. So,
we have. It's up above 1,200, and there's over 60 or 80,000 cases just in the United States right now. The worldwide dead are way over 20,000. It's the rapid contagion and the fact that you don't know who's going to be taken down by it. One person gets it and they're okay, and the next person gets it and they die. And I'm afraid. I don't even want to say out loud my fears about it because people don't need to be afraid. I'm trying to be responsible here, Dark.
Well, what I'm saying is I'm not sure yet that we really do. I give you guys an example. So we had Mardi Gras here in New Orleans, February 24th. We're going on March 25th, 26th. We've had a number of cases here. We have a number of deaths. But we're talking about a 2-week to a month-long incubation period. Right now, our hospital should be completely overwhelmed with people. You got to remember, this is Mardi Gras. Millions of people came to New Orleans. We're all out in the streets partying. We're all hanging out, people drinking, hugging, kissing, smoking, spitting, making love in the middle of the street. In my opinion, we should see more damage right now than we're seeing, and that's what I'm looking for. Unfortunately, that's the only way you can gauge it. Now, I do know people who they say have died of coronavirus here because I have an insurance business, and there have been a couple of life insurance claims put in. But one of the people that died was 83 years old. Another guy that died was 54 years old, and he already had lung cancer. So when I look at just taking in what I'm seeing around me, I'm not discrediting or belittling or discounting anything, but I'm just to the point now where it's like, if we don't change and turn our economy back on, we're going to go into a Great Depression, and you're talking about people starving to death. My concern is the chain of supply, the supply chains. If nobody's nobody's loading the trucks to get food to us, that's a problem. If people are too scared to go out and actually go to work and take care of the things that keep everything going, we're going to have a major freaking problem on our hands.
Oh,
and
yeah, there's a word
no
for it.
that.
There's a word for it, too, and some futurists 10, 11 years ago have even predicted it. It's called collapse, and it is as scary as you think it sounds, and I don't want to see it. I really do not, and I hesitate to talk about it, but if we don't get things kick-started back up, or at least slowly, we're looking at a system-wide collapse where everything is tied to everything else. Everything is linked together. And I don't know that it's a collapse we could recover from. Our system is built on growth, infinite growth, and I know infinite growth is not sustainable. But we're caught between a rock and a hard place because we don't want it to spread and cause more cases and overwhelm the medical system, but at the same time we can't carry on like this. And you're right, I've been saying it. We got to grow up and mature to deal with this. And reality has a way of doing that to people. I know you've come across that in your life, Dark. You go along all happy in your life and everything's one big party, and then something happens, reality smacks you in the face, throws some cold water up in your face, and then you realize, oh, I need to shape up or ship out. And that's when we start changing our actions. I just think people need to pay attention, be vigilant, keep hope alive, and just be careful and try to survive under this thing. But it is so tricky. We can't just have business stop. I don't know that you can just shut that down and restart it whenever you feel like it.
No, I don't believe you can, and I think we're screwed. Out of me personally, that's just what I feel. But let's get. I don't want to depress people with that. If we got any more calls on the paranormal, I don't want to jump down that rabbit hole because I'll start ranting.
I know. So will I. Yeah, so will I. Well, thank you very much, Marcus, for the call and for the absolutely creepy story. I don't have. Let me check the looking glass. Let me see. I am not reading that on the air. Very funny. I am not reading that one on the air. But I have a clip, Dart, that I would like to play for you, actually. You're the one always bringing stories, but I kind of want to bring something to you. Now, I worked really hard to find this, and this is allegedly the La Llorona. I don't know. Are you familiar with La Llorona?
Is that the witch?
It's the, oh gosh, if I get this right, it's the Mexican weeping woman or wailing woman. Okay, and this is a story that's told, it's been told for many, many years now, and I believe I have found a clip of this woman. And now what this is a security guard. Let me pull up my little note on it here. Okay, so this is a security guard, and in the building that he worked in, every access door has a card reader to get in and out of the rooms. It's a government building, and in this clip that you're going to hear, it's 3:30 in the morning on a Sunday night, and this security guard here should be completely alone. Now, he sent this recording to his boss. He recorded it on his phone. It's just a 2-minute clip, but I shortened it to much shorter than that. And he sent this to his boss, and then he immediately put in a transfer after this happened. Take a listen.
Just listen. Look your head at me. Just listen.
That's him running away.
Oh, hell no.
You hear him breathing there? Yeah. So, how does that grab you?
Oh, I don't bang, buddy. You know what? That building would have been left wide open. They'd have been like, man, you're fired. Yeah, guess what? I'm not worried about it. That reminds me of something that happened at the cigar factory in New Orleans down here. So Cigar Factory New Orleans is haunted, period. Nobody can dispute it. And it was my hangout for 15 years. And there was this one guy who, he was a cool dude. He was kind of a little bit of a knucklehead, but he worked his way up to where he had privileges to close the building. And this particular night, we're back there smoking cigars, and I would hang out after closing while they counted the money and straighten up and sweep up the floors. And so I would hang out there till like 11, 12 o'clock, and then we would all leave together. Well, that particular night, we are leaving out, set the alarm, or we try to set the alarm, and it's a motion sensor alarm. And so in order for it to set, you have to stand still. When he tries to set the alarm, it won't set. We do it like 10 times. It finally sets, right? It's me, him, and 2 other guys. We're all standing outside the front doors of the business. We see him turn the key, lock the door, right? And then we all pretty much walk our way in different separate directions. Now, I watched him lock this door. About an hour later, my friend calls and he says, he's cursing. He's like, man, we about to fire this, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what's going on, man? He left the front door unlocked. I said, no, he didn't. I was there. I watched him lock the door. And 2 other people were with me. He locked the door. Well, you explain to me how I'm looking at the cameras and the front door to the business is wide open on Decatur, and the police done walked into the building and called us from our phone. I said, bro, listen to me. He locked the door. We all were standing there with him when he locked the door. He shook the handle. So the next day we go in, and we're sitting there watching the videotapes, and you see us all walk out, and you actually see me grab a cigar off the shelf and light it and don't pay for it. And they're like, man, you need to pay for that cigar. I was like, I'm not paying for that. And we go out the front door. You see us standing at the alarm, and everybody kind of freezing, standing still, making poses, waiting on the alarm to set. See him pressing the buttons over and over and over again. Then you can see on the cameras from the outside and the inside him locking the door. You can hear the door going clunk.
Okay.
And then you see us going all different directions. And then about an hour later, the doors swing open inward, because they open inward. They just swing all the way open, both doors. And I tell him, I say, now you explain to me how the hell both doors swing all the way open, and you telling me this dude didn't lock the door. I say, even if he didn't lock the door should just slide open a little bit. They shouldn't swing all the way open. And he was like, yeah, you're right, but we're going to fire him anyway. I'm like, come on, bro, y'all wrong for that.
Well, no, he shouldn't get fired for
No,
that.
he got fired.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
God, they're open by themselves. God, of all the ghostly phenomena, doors opening and closing, this is the one thing that really just grabs me the wrong way. I don't like it. I don't like anything about
And it happened
that.
over and over again to the point where they had to put, what do you call those, padlocks on the front door. So now you have the key where you turn, you have a padlock at the top, a padlock at the bottom. So where they had to padlock the doors when they leave with the master locks, with the key. And that's the only way the doors wouldn't open up.
That's just insane.
Oh, yeah, his name was Charles. That was the guy's name. Charles Pruitt was his name.
Oh, my God. Man, well, you outdo yourself every time you come on the show, and every time I think, there's no possible way he's going to be able to outdo last time, and here you are. I'm going to be up all night. I'm going to be turning the lights on throughout the whole house, and, I'm going to need to cuddle with the kitty and get some hot chocolate and do something to calm the nerves here, but I love spending a night with you, Dark. It's just something else, and I mean that in every sense of both words. IamDarkWaters.com. That's how people keep up with everything you're doing still, right?
Yep, that's where you find it. IamDarkWaters.com. And if you want to send me a story, just email me at IamDarkWaters.com and put your phone number, and I'll pick up the phone and call you back.
All right. Well, and that is how we get the paranormal business done right there. Thank you so much for coming on, man. I really didn't say this earlier in the night, but, Dark has once again saved my rear because another guest we were supposed to have on tonight completely flaked out on us. So I really thank you for coming to the rescue one more time and scaring the holy hell out of all of us. You're so good at that. Take care of yourself. Stay safe out there. I know you will. And just keep hope alive. We're going to get through this thing.
Man, I've got a story that still gives me chills whenever I think about it. When I was about 15, living in Kenya, I had this crazy encounter. Our house was on a farm, so it was pitch black at night, no lights anywhere. So this one night, around 3 or 4 a.m., I hear what sounds like someone stomping around on our roof. Curiosity got the better of me, and I went outside to check it out, but I didn't bother turning on any lights. What I saw up there freaked me out. A dude in a long coat and work boots just walking around on the roof. I started yelling at him to get off, but since it was dark, I couldn't really see him clearly, just the outline of a man. After I finished my round, this guy just jumps off the roof, landing a solid 40 feet away from me. I had grabbed a machete before stepping outside, and when this person landed, I noticed his knees didn't bend like a normal person's would. They bent in the opposite direction, backwards. Then he turns and faces me. Have you ever been in a fight before? Then you know you shift your body weight and get ready for a fight, stepping back and holding my machete up. I remember thinking, I don't know what manner of man you are, but I will take off your head if you came near me. However, he just took off. I told myself he was either drunk or high, so I let it go and went back to bed. However, that did not explain the way his knees went backwards. But here's why I'm telling you this story. I want to warn anyone who might experience something similar, especially if it involves someone heavy running on your roof in the middle of the night. Don't just rush out there without thinking. A year after my first encounter, it happened again. This time though, I turned on the porch lights before heading out. My porch had these 8 100-watt bulbs that lit up everything. With the lights on, I could see this wasn't a man. It had clothes on, sure, but it wasn't human. I grabbed my machete ready to defend myself, and this thing jumped off the roof just like the first time. We faced off for a moment, about 20 feet apart. I didn't show any fear, and I think it knew I was ready to fight. It just stared for a bit, then ran off into the night. This time I got a close look at it. I looked like something from the old world. The times before God flooded the world. It had a face that was a combination of a man and a vulture. Long nose, jet black eyes like it was a birdman. I'm not trying to scare anyone, just want to make sure you're cautious. Over the years, I found out this creature has been seen by others too, especially by those who've gone out to investigate noises unarmed. I've kept this story to myself mostly, but now that I'm older, I worry about others encountering the same thing. Believe it or not, I ran into it again in Canada on my daughter's roof in the dead of winter. Just goes to show, you never know what's out there. If you ever hear something strange at night, especially on your roof, be smart about how you check it out. And maybe, just maybe, keep a machete handy.
I've got to tell you about something that happened to me, something that still sends shivers down my spine when I think about it. It was right after I had my baby boy. You know how life gets. You're juggling work, the baby, and everything else. It's just non-stop. So this all went down while I was staying over at my mum's place in Texas, trying to get some help with the new baby and all. They say when you've just had a baby, you're kind of vulnerable, not just physically, but also in a way that you might attract negative vibes or energies or whatever. Honestly, I never paid much mind to that stuff until that night. My baby wouldn't settle, just fussy and crying, which wasn't like him. My mum was trying to rock him to sleep and I was lying there next to her, just talking softly, trying not to wake him up more. Then out of nowhere it was like I hit a wall. I couldn't move. I could hear my mum next to me, but it was like I was stuck in my own body, unable to speak or do anything. And then I felt it, this deep, dark feeling like something was there in the room with us, wanting to take my baby. Panic isn't even the word. It was pure terror, the kind that grips you so hard you can't even scream. My mum was still talking, oblivious, asking if I could lay him down now that he'd finally fallen asleep. But I couldn't answer. I couldn't do anything. In that moment of absolute despair, I did the only thing that felt like it could make any difference. I prayed. I called out to Jesus in my head, begging him to make it stop, to protect my baby. And then, as if someone hit the play button again, I could move. I practically shouted, "Jesus, help us!" My mum looked at me like I'd lost my mind, asking why I was suddenly shouting and why I hadn't been answering her. I tried to explain, but how do you explain that kind of fear, that kind of encounter? I didn't sleep a wink for the rest of that night, just watching over my baby, making sure he was still there, still breathing, still safe. Since then, every night, without fail, I pray over my baby. I pray for protection, for safety, for peace. That night changed something in me, made me believe in things I can't see, and showed me the power of calling on Jesus. I can't forget it, and I can't ignore it. It was real, it was terrifying, and it made me a believer in more ways than one.
Let me give you the straight up version of something wild that happened to me a couple of weeks back. I'm in college studying engineering, which basically means my life is a never-ending cycle of all-nighters. Because of that, I end up wandering around outside a lot at unholy hours, just trying to shake off the stress. So this one night, around 2 a.m., I'm out walking with my buddy. I had this massive assignment due the next day, and I was nearly done. My friend, on the other hand, had been glued to his video games until I managed to drag him out for a smoke break. We were just shooting the breeze, walking through this quiet, suburban area when we stumbled upon something gruesome. A bloody, furry mess on the sidewalk. Looked like roadkill, probably fresh since there weren't any flies yet. We gave it a wide bath and kept moving. It was late autumn. The air was crisp. And honestly, it was a nice break from my cramped apartment. We'd walked about 3 kilometers out when we decided to head back. That's when things got weird. Turning around, I suddenly felt dizzy, like a massive gust of wind hit me, but there was nothing there. My friend joked that I was finally cracking from lack of sleep, but as we walked back, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, like there were shadows moving around us. I started freaking out a bit, and my body, noticing I was a mess, suggested we pick up the pace. When we got back to where we'd seen the roadkill, it was gone. All that was left was a blood trail leading off the road into the bushes. I was practically hyperventilating by then. My friend, trying to be the brave one, whipped out his phone flashlight and went to check out where the trail led. I couldn't see what he saw. It was blocking my view. But then he suddenly snapped the light off, grabbed me, and we bolted. We couldn't keep running the whole way back, so it turned into this frantic power walk all the way home. I kept asking him what he saw, and all he'd say was that something was eating the dog. After that, he climbed up, saying he didn't want to talk about it anymore, afraid it might draw whatever it was right to us. And yeah, because of all that, I couldn't even finish my assignment. Just handed it in as it was.
I've always been into all that spooky supernatural stuff, watching shows about ghost encounters and whatnot. But personally, never had anything happen that made me go, yep, that's it. Ghosts are real. That is, until this one night that pretty much flipped everything I believed upside down. So I was driving to my night shift job listening to this radio talk show. They were going on about these apps you can download to track ghosts. Kinda like those EVP things you see on ghost hunting shows. For kicks, I thought. Why not? And downloaded a couple to see how cheesy they were, expecting some lame jump scares or whatever. I messed with them a bit at work, but once it got late and I was by myself, I chickened out and dropped it. Nothing happened, no creepy voices or whatever, just me in an empty office freaking myself out over nothing. Got home, did my usual wind-down routine and crashed. But then, man, I thought I was having this nightmare. I woke up to this dark figure straddling me, choking me, and whispering some really chilling stuff like, "Fight all you want. You can't stop me. I'm too powerful now." I was panicking, trying to figure out how to get my roommate's attention. I'm there, trying to scream, grab anything to make noise, but I just couldn't. It felt like this thing had me locked down tight. Then, I hear my roommate moving around outside my room, and just for a second this thing turns and its grip loosens. That's my chance. I scream as loud as I can. The figure vanishes and my roommate's bursting through the door, finding me a total mess, shaking, crying, the whole 9 yards. I've tried to make sense of it digging around the internet. Most places chalk it up to sleep paralysis, but I swear, it was something else. I can't help wondering if messing with those apps stirred up something. Ever since then, there's this unease that just hangs over me, like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. So yeah, thanks for letting me spill all this. It feels good to get it off my chest without someone looking at me like I've lost it.
Around 2 a.m. this morning, I was woken up by my little dog barking in the other room. I called out from my bedroom for him to stop barking and come back to bed. He usually snuggles up next to me while sleeping. He came back, jumped onto the bed, and sat staring towards the bedroom door, clearly agitated and seeming to be in guardian mode. Suddenly, he sprang from the bed as if he heard something only he could and ran back into the other room, continuing to bark. What I found odd was that I have a doggy door installed, and he never went outside. If there were a cat or someone prowling about, he surely would have given chase. Many of the older homes in the French Quarter of New Orleans, Louisiana, have courtyards or small backyards, often with wrought iron fences rather than alleyways. This, however, still didn't explain why my dog was remaining inside and not rushing into the yard. After listening to his barking a bit longer, I decided to investigate without turning on any lights to remain inconspicuous. I made my way down to the other end of the house where my dog was barking at the French doors that lead to the courtyard. I began to scan the courtyard from left to right. Initially, I saw nothing but the shadows of the crepe myrtles and the flickering of gas lamps against the brick walls. Then I saw it. Standing off to the right side of my courtyard, near where my bedroom is, was a tall, dark silhouette of a man wearing what appeared to be a fedora-type hat. My heart started to race, and my dog was barking furiously. It stood completely still, seemingly looking in my direction. Suddenly, it vanished. It didn't fade away. It was just gone from one moment to the next. I thought, what the hell did I just see? I got a foreboding feeling from whatever it was. Somehow, I managed to get back to my room, crawl under the covers, and after some time, fell back to sleep. My dog followed me and was silent for the rest of the night. In the morning, I looked outside through the French doors again, wondering if, in my half-asleep state, I could have mistaken something in the courtyard for that shadow. I hadn't. But why was my dog going ballistic? Today, I pondered if this could be connected to recent tragedies. Over the Memorial Day weekend at the end of May, I lost the love of my life to an accidental shooting. My dad is also terminally ill, and I can't help but wonder if seeing this shadow man might be linked to either event. I'm not seeking sympathy with this story. Yes, it's a terrible situation, but I'm genuinely curious about what this shadow was and why it decided to appear in my courtyard last night. If anyone has any insights, please let me know.
I'm just a teenager, but I've already experienced a lot of weird stuff. This one time, my best friend Diane and I were arguing over our lunches when suddenly our friend started yelling out our names, urging us to follow him to the sports field. We found him digging in the ground, and when we asked him what he was up to, he showed us this tooth. It was a huge fang, I believe. When our teacher noticed us with the tooth, she insisted we dispose of it, suggesting it was some kind of vampire fang. We all laughed it off because I firmly believe there's no such thing. So the friend who found the tooth threw it really high into the air. But then, his hand started bleeding profusely out of nowhere. Despite the amount of blood when he was sent to the nurse's office, there wasn't a single mark on his hand. Weird, right? On another occasion, my school, which is divided into 2 buildings, one for elementary students and the other for high schoolers, became the backdrop for another strange event. Some of the high school boys started calling me White Lady due to my pale skin. Initially, it didn't bother me much, but it quickly became annoying, so I decided to talk to my teacher about it. During lunch, she summoned the 3 boys who had been teasing me and gathered us in her classroom. She then shared a story about a similar incident with one of her former students and how after her death she haunted the boys who had teased her. That story genuinely frightened me. After lunch, the boys who had been teasing me went to the restroom. About 10 minutes later, they came back screaming and running towards me, frantically apologizing. When I asked them what was wrong, they claimed they saw a white lady appear in the mirror of the bathroom. At first, I didn't believe them, thinking they were just trying to scare me as payback for telling on them, and because of the scary story our teacher had told. But they seemed genuinely terrified.
This creepy story happened to my younger cousin when he was about to leave our province in Sta Monica Laguna to study in Manila. The day before he left, his 2 playmates, Cat and Carlin, asked him if he could still play with them for the last time. My cousin agreed to them and told them to come back at 4 p.m. since he still had errands to do. At exactly 4 p.m., he heard Cat calling his name from the outside of their house, so he immediately went out. But, to his confusion, Cat was not around, and there were no other kids around the area. My cousin just decided to go to Cat's house to ask if she was calling him, but Cat said she didn't go to his house yet and she was just about to leave and call him. After confirming with Cat, he just thought it was just his mind playing tricks on him, so they just fetched Carlin and started playing beside the narrow road. They decided that my cousin would be the it, since he was the oldest. After he counted up to 10, he immediately left the spot and started looking for the 2 girls. A few minutes of checking every corner and possible hiding place near the spot area, he first found Carlin hiding behind the tricycle parked beside the road. He just peeped underneath the tricycle and saw Carlin's feet on the other side of the tricycle. He was sure it was Carlin since he saw the same slippers and pajamas. He shouted, "Boom, Carlin," and ran as fast as he could. But after he reached the spot, there was no Carlin running behind him. He just decided to keep looking again for more minutes until Carlin approached him and told him it was getting dark. They should just find Cat and go home. He asked Carlin if she was hiding behind the tricycle, but she said no, since she was hiding in one of the nearest alleys. He told Carlin that there seemed someone's copying Cat's voice and Carlin's appearance. Both of them got an eerie feeling, so they hurriedly looked for Cat. When they both reached the short alley, they saw Cat's shadow from the other edge. They were both sure it was Cat since the shadow had the same body build and hair length. They started shouting, "Boom, Cat!" But when they were very near to Cat's shadow, they got terrified and ran so fast back to the road, since they both noticed that the shadow, whom they thought belongs to Cat, was on the opposite direction of their shadows. They were both sure it was not normal since the sun was setting behind them, and there was no other light near the area. When they both reached the road, they found Cat waiting for them. While they were telling Cat about the creepy shadow that they both saw, they all heard a giggle near the area, and in split seconds, they all saw a kid running so fast into the alley, and they all freaked out when they realized she just looked like Carlin. They didn't see the face, but the hair and clothes were just the same.
This incident took place in London back in 2016 when I was 16 years old. I was preparing for my GCSEs and used to attend tutoring sessions late into the evening. One night, I found myself leaving the class around 10:30 p.m. There were 2 routes leading to my home. One was a longer path that took about 45 minutes, and the other was a shortcut that was deserted after dark. Since I was already late and hungry, I decided to take the shortcut. Biggest mistake. On that route, I had to cross a small bridge and then walk about 2 kilometers to reach my home, passing an abandoned hospital along the way. The weather was pleasant that day, and I was in a good mood as I plugged in my earphones and started walking. Everything was normal until I neared that hospital. Suddenly, the wind turned cold, giving me goosebumps. This was strange because London is usually quite humid. Nevertheless, I kept walking when I felt as though someone was following me. I turned around, but no one was there. I continued to walk when, in the distance, I saw a woman wearing what looked like my neighbor's coat. Relieved, I thought I wouldn't have to walk alone on this eerie road. I shouted, calling her name, but there was no response. So I started walking faster towards her. However, I couldn't get any closer to her. So I began to run, still calling her name. Despite our walking at a normal pace, the distance between us remained unchanged. Confused, I stopped to figure out what was really happening. I kept my eyes on her, and in a fraction of seconds, she vanished into thin air. Keep in mind, this road was straight for at least 1 kilometer with nowhere to hide. There was no way she could have run off or hidden somewhere. That was enough for me. I lost control and started running like never before, only stopping once I reached my home. I was so scared that I came down with a fever that lasted for a week. The next day, I told everything to my family, but they didn't believe me and shrugged it off, saying I should take a break from studying and that I was imagining things. But weird things started happening. I would feel someone caressing my hair as I slept. I was afraid to be in the dark, and I remember seeing silhouettes in my room whenever I was alone. However, I didn't tell these things to my family. But one day, my cousin, with whom I shared my room, came running out of the room screaming. We were all in the living room watching TV. When she was asked what happened, she said that after taking a shower, she entered the room and saw me sitting near the window looking outside. I usually sat there after finishing my studies. She opened the cupboard and was searching for something. When she tried to ask me whether I had seen what she was looking for, getting no reply from me, she looked towards the window and found no one there. I was still in the living room with everyone watching television. After hearing her, I shared what I had been experiencing for a week. Now my family believed something was indeed wrong and took me to a holy place. There we met with the person who dealt with these kinds of cases. He recited some verses from the Bible over me and instructed my elders to never let me be alone in that house and strictly told me never to take that road again. He didn't tell me the reason as he felt I was too young to know. However, things didn't happen like that again, and we even moved out of that home after 3-4 months. So that's it.
For much of my childhood days in Edinburgh, Scotland, my parents often worried about me as they felt I was sensitive to spirits and prone to seeing things others couldn't see. My mother thinks this may stem from the fact that Dad's grandmother was a well-regarded healer in the old days back in Ireland. I don't know much about my Irish relations though, as I have not kept in touch with that side of the family after my father died over a decade ago. Mom only mentioned this incident during a visit back to Edinburgh some years ago, a few decades after we were all grown up and left home. It must have been during the late 1960s, and I was about 4 years old at the time. I'm sure I hadn't even started kindergarten yet. My parents, older sister, who was about 7, and I were walking along Royal Mile, near where the Edinburgh Castle now stands, after a weekly dinner at Grandma's house. Edinburgh was a lot quieter in those days. Cars were an expense most families couldn't afford, so there was not much traffic on the road. It was already dark, about 8 or 9 p.m. We had walked halfway to the bus stop when Dad asked why I kept looking back. I told him there was a tall man in black following us. It was so long ago, I honestly can't remember too many details about what I thought I saw. Only that it was something darker than the shadows under the few streetlights. I do remember this growing feeling of unease that made my chest feel too tight. My family couldn't see anyone or anything, and I burst into tears because no one believed me. Even at that young age, I wasn't in the habit of making up tales to my parents. They were very strict with us and frowned on any fanciful nonsense. Children should be seen and not heard, and all that. When in public, we were not allowed to create a scene that might embarrass them, My behavior seemed so odd to Dad that he hailed a passing taxi, a luxury for us at the time, to get us out of there. As we piled into the taxi, my sister looked back from the back seat, but said she still couldn't see anything out there. When the taxi driver heard what had upset me, he nodded sagely at Dad and said that the Royal Mile was particularly unclean. He advised Dad and Gaelic against having the family out on that stretch of road after dark in the future. He reminded him that during the numerous battles and dark periods in Scottish history, including the Jacobite Risings, many terrible cruelties were inflicted on the locals. As a consequence, restless spirits were thought to linger in areas where great violence had occurred. We visited Grandma's house many times after that, but I don't remember any other incident. I have to ask Mom if Dad took precautions after that is, leaving earlier or only staying for lunch. Coincidentally, or not, Grandma's house on the Royal Mile was said to have been a significant site during historical events, but that's another story.
Now, I wouldn't call this a dog man encounter. I would really call this more of a dog man sighting. Because I know what I saw, and this was a giant dog. Understand, I've been preaching for 15 years. My father was a preacher. My grandfather was a preacher. My great-grandfather was a preacher on the side of the road with no church. Around this time period, it's the Ember months. September, October, November, December. And I don't know why. Maybe it's something in the spirit realm, but a lot of people die in the Ember months. And what got me was we had prayed for no deaths to happen during these months, and we just get this rash of deaths. 6 people die in a row, 6 funerals in a row. In the word, it says that when our brothers and sisters in Christ are weeping, that we are to weep with them. And I take it seriously. So at each and every funeral, I spent time with the family crying and weeping and ministering to them. And it was the day of the last funeral out of 6 that I found myself sitting in my church office, exhausted. I lay down on a sofa and just pass out, go to sleep. When I wake up, it's 1 a.m. My wife is texting and calling me, trying to figure out if I'm okay. So I stumble out of the side door of the church and start heading to my car in the parking lot. And that's when I see this thing across the road under a street lamp. It's just standing on 2 legs looking at me. At first, I thought it was some kind of demon because it's 9 feet tall, jet black, and its eyes are reflecting this yellow. Then it drops down on all 4s and starts to walk diagonally across the road. And it's a big black wolf. I mean, massive black wolf. It goes into the woods on the same side of the street that I'm on, and I hear it circling around the church and going deeper into the woods.
It was one of our top stories of 2016, and in fact, in all of Tennessee history. The Smoky Mountain fires in East Tennessee, consuming decades of memories and also claiming the lives of more than a dozen people. News Channel 5's Matthew Torres takes a look back at one of the most tragic incidents Tennessee has ever seen.
It is the most visited national park in the country with more than 11 million visitors a year. From Sky 5, you can see what makes the Great Smoky Mountains so great.
This is a special part of the world for a long time, and it will remain that.
But the home to a picture-perfect backdrop recently captured some of its most devastating moments ever.
Go, go, go.
Wildfires quickly ravaged mountains and the popular tourist town of Gatlinburg.
This is the largest fire in the last 100 years of the state of Tennessee.
Officials say the fire started in the chimney tops by 2 juveniles right before Thanksgiving. By the night of November 28th, it became unstoppable and took everyone by surprise. prompting a massive evacuation.
The winds is what got me. The winds was so bad, things were blowing and breaking.
Hurricane-like winds and severe drought conditions helped flames devour everything in its path. The result? An apocalyptic nightmare. More than 17,000 acres burned and more than 2,000 homes and businesses destroyed. Hundreds were forced to stay at shelters.
This is our life here. These are our mountains. God gave them to us to use and to enjoy. And to see it happen like this is just, it's terrible.
It took almost a week before homeowners were allowed to lay eyes on what's left. For hundreds, it wasn't much.
You know, I was a fireman for 31 years and I've never seen anything of this magnitude. I mean, I've seen houses like this, but I mean, not whole neighborhoods.
November 22nd, 2016 was one of the greatest days in my life. That was the day that my son was born. And when I tell you, my wife and I were ecstatic, we were absolutely ecstatic. There's nothing like having a child of your own. In fact, I found that me being the father made me over time become more selfless, more mature, and more importantly, brought me closer to God. However, November 23rd, 2016 was the day I almost lost my life. And it was a juxtaposition between that happiness of having a son and finding myself in the middle of a raging fire trying to save the lives of other people that damn near broke me. There's something about when you find yourself in danger, I mean mortal danger, your life flashes before your eyes. You've heard people talk about it before. Well, that really does happen. As I found myself in this situation during the Gatlinburg fire, my life flashed before my eyes. I realized that I didn't want to die. And it was while I was having that realization that I didn't want to die that I had my encounter with what you would call a dog man. Now stop right here. Let me rewind and bring you up to speed on what was going on in a moment. Now, if you don't know, that was one of the worst fires in modern history. 14 people lost their lives, countless amounts of property damage. And let me say this to you listening. There's absolutely no way that I would have ever thought about seeing a werewolf in the midst of a fire, but it absolutely made sense. I mean, we as humans flee forest fires. Wild animals flee forest fires. Why wouldn't these cryptids find themselves in situations where they needed to flee as well? When those fires started, no one imagined what the end results would be. Lord knows I didn't imagine it whatsoever. I remember turning on the TV, seeing the fire, and getting the call to head into work. The evacuation orders going out, and making up in my mind that I would do whatever I could do to help my fellow citizens. Fast forward to 11 p.m., November 23rd. We are out helping people evacuate. The fire is starting to rage and roll downhill. The wind is kicking up, and it's a wind unlike anything I had ever seen. In fact, I'd seen forest fires. I've seen household fires. I've seen houses burned down with people inside of them. But I've never, ever seen anything like this. We find ourselves in this situation. A gentleman pulls up in his vehicle and tells us that his house is on fire and his elderly mother is trapped upstairs. So we race over to the location, head inside the house, and sure enough, this elderly woman is there, laid at the top of the steps, choking on smoke. And as I'm carrying this woman down the steps, she starts to talk about Timothy. And she's talking about Timothy like Timothy, it's a baby. She says, "Oh, my sweet Timothy, don't leave him up there, my sweet Timothy." In my mind, I'm thinking that Timothy is a child. At no point in time was I considering that Timothy was an actual feline, a cat. I get her down the steps outside of the house. The team is spraying water on her house. I head back inside looking for what I thought was a child named Timothy. I go into that room. The walls and the ceiling are on fire, and I see nothing. Absolutely nothing. A few seconds later, this brown and white cat darts from under the dresser, through the open door, down the steps, and heads out. So now and I need you to understand, like I told you, I thought we were dealing with a person. Now, as I go turning to leave the room, going back down the steps, the ceiling starts to collapse. And I find myself in a situation where the ceiling towards the front door is falling down and is on fire. Now I have to jump over the banister and find another way out of this burning house.
And here in this moment is when I had my encounter with what I'm calling a dog man, because as I'm circling around that house looking, there is a side door. And when I tell you I run full speed and run through that door to get out of that house, I slam my body into that door, stumbling outside, fall to the ground. And when I stand up, relieved that I'm outside of the house, and that's when I look uphill behind the house and see this creature jumping and leaping through the fire. And when I tell you this looks like something from a freaking horror movie, 9 feet tall, muscular, and it's just bounding and leaping, barely touching the ground. This thing lands about 15 feet away from me, looks directly at me. And I still remember this as clear as day. Its fur was smoldering with the fire. Then whips his head, takes off around the neighbor's house, and is gone. Now, I don't know if you've ever found yourself in a situation where you sweep something under the rug. You know, you experienced something, you know it was real, it happened, but it was just way too much going on for you to deal with it and process it in that moment. Over the next couple of days, we were fighting one of the worst fires in American history. And I couldn't process that in that moment. It wasn't until the next month when I sat down, thankful to be alive, thankful to be with my family, that I really turned my mind to what I saw. And I made sketches of it, and it fits the exact same description of what you call a dog man.
What do you think about doing something a bit different tonight?
I was thinking we could catch up on that series we started last week. There's a new season out.
That sounds good, but I was actually hoping we could listen to something tonight.
Listen, like a podcast or something?
Have you heard of the Dark Waters channel?
I don't know. Monsters and ghosts aren't really my thing. I don't believe in that stuff.
It's like those old-time radio shows where you have to use your imagination.
Well, when you put it like that, it does sound interesting.
It's really captivating.
I guess it wouldn't hurt to try something new.
Yeah.
And hey,
exactly.
If it gets too spooky for me, we can always switch back to Netflix. All right, but if I end up having nightmares about monsters under the bed, I'm blaming you.
Let me start off my story here. I consider myself to be a wilderness expert. I have such a deep understanding of being outdoors, bushcraft, and survival that there are very few men who can rival the knowledge that I have. And I know that sounds arrogant for me to say something like that, but I'll say this to you. I spent over 100 days in the wilderness during wintertime in a shelter that I built myself. No tent, no nothing. So when I was approached by a TV producer with the idea that he wanted to film a show with me in the woods of Alaska for 40 days, I thought it was the perfect opportunity. In fact, when I discussed it with my wife, she encouraged me to do it. Now, pause right here and let me say this. I'm not sure if you ever met a person and you got a bad vibe from them, but then you decided that you were going to ignore the bad vibe. That's the situation I found myself in when I met Chester. I'm not going to say his last name because I don't want to put this guy all the way out there. He's still in the business. But when I met Chester, I had a bad vibe about him, a bad feeling. Just the look in his eyes. Nonetheless, I wanted to be on television. I wanted to be a star. Since then, that desire to be on TV and to be a star has been completely bled out of me. I could freaking care less at this point. But back then, I really wanted it. And so when he came to me and he pitched his idea, 40 days in the wilderness, of Alaska. Me and the cameraman all alone. And I start off with just the basics. I was excited. I'm not going to lie to you. I was extremely excited and ready to go. And the first time that Chester was on some BS was after the negotiations. Now, I negotiated I would get $10,000 for being in the woods for those 40 days. That was all I was going to get compensated, but the rights to the show were completely his. I didn't want anything to do with the show at all. I just figured if I'm going to be out in the woods anyway, I might as well get paid for it. Well, we come to an agreement, sign paperwork, and he mails me a check. And I go to deposit the check, and the check bounces. Now, imagine a scene. My wife and I are sitting there at the kitchen table when we come to the realization that the check has bounced. And I'm not sure about you, but you know, when you get money in, you tend to spend that money. So we thought we had $5,000 come in, so I let my wife go shopping. Well, that $5,000 hits the bank, and then the check bounces, and now we got a major problem. So now I'm calling Chester, telling him, listen, I don't know what kind of shiesty business you're on, but you're going to need to get me my money. He goes on to explain to me that the funds were coming into his account from a larger producer from a TV station, and that the funds came in delayed. I explained to him, well, he should have written the check to me once the money cleared. I told him I needed another check or I wasn't doing anything, and this time I needed a cashier's check. Now, to be clear with you, the man overnighted the money to me the next day. It seemed like it wasn't going to be a problem, but I should have known right then and there that that was an issue. That was immaturity on my part, and more than just immaturity, it was just me being greedy, me going after that money. Fast forward, we're getting prepared to start the show, and he introduces me to the cameraman, a guy named Benjamin that they call Bud. Bud himself was an outdoorsman. I mean, this guy really understood what it meant to be out in the woods. He had been hunting, fishing, hiking his entire life, and he had worked on a whole bunch of major TV shows. I mean, a whole hell of a lot better about the situation. The two of us, Bud and I, spent a week together in my hometown getting to know each other because we're going to spend a significant amount of time out in the woods. He and I go into the woods together and go on a 3-day camping trip, and I really get to like and understand this man. Now, while we're out there, he starts to talk about Chester, and he says, you know, I did a couple of these with Chester before, and I'm hoping that this one actually works out. I'm like, well, what do you mean you hope that this one works out? He goes on to explain that Chester has been pitching these shows to TV stations for years. He always pays the money, but when it's time to get it across the finish line, it never gets across the finish line. If I go and explain to Bud, I say, listen, man, I frankly don't care. You know why? Because I'm getting my money. And he reinforces my mindset and thought processes when he tells me, no, you did the right thing getting paid the money up front, because you never know how it's going to go with these TV producers. Fast forward, we're taken to Alaska. I'm going to say some things to you and explain quite a few things to you. The show was supposed to be pitched like I was in the Alaskan wilderness, but the location that I was brought to was nowhere near Alaska. It was Northern California, yes. Did it get cold? Absolutely. But it wasn't Alaska. And when I asked Chester about it, he said, well, you know, at the end of the day, it's television. You know, they have no clue of knowing where you are. I didn't like the plan, but I had already accepted the money, so I went along with it. The first compromise. And after that, it was compromise. We get to the location, we got the whole TV producer thing rolling. Me riding in the truck, cameras inside the truck, cameras on the windows. They want me to talk and anticipate what's going to happen. And I realized more than anything, he's asking me, a man who knows about survival, to be more of an actor than a survivalist. And so I'm just talking to the people, explaining to them my process, looking at the layout of the land, trying to decide where I'm going to be and what I'm going to do. When I get dropped off, all I have is my rifle, an axe, a thermal blanket, and a tarp, which quite frankly was more than enough for what I needed to do. So I head into the wilderness with the cameraman, Bud, right behind me, recording it the entire way. I also have a handheld camcorder for me to document my emotions and feelings. It takes me about 2 hours to find a suitable location. And the real challenge was there was a lake on the map. And I wanted to be close enough to the lake to where I can hike down there and get water. But also, I didn't want to be too close because when it became cold and the lake snow effect kicked in, it would be horrendous. So I made camp 2.5 miles away from that lake. And I get clearing the land, cutting down trees, and building me a shelter. The shelter for the first night was 100% pure garbage, just enough to get me through the night. I got firewood, I have everything set up, and I'm positioned. The first night, it's cold, but it's nothing I've never felt before, and I'm fine. Over that first week, I am hustling and bustling, trying to make sure I have a firm structure. And by the time we get to the 4th day of that week, I have a structure. I have something built that can withstand cold weather. And more than that, I have an area enclosed to where I don't have to worry about predators coming in or anything like that. I'm really getting hungry and I turn my attention to food. And so now I'm going hunting. And to me, the easiest source of protein was wild birds. Now, when I was hiking into my location, I ran across a couple of wild turkeys. But more than anything, I noticed that there were quail everywhere. So the very first piece of protein I got was quail. That day I killed 5 of them, took them back, and started the process of cleaning and cooking them, and then decided that I was going to smoke some of the meat. So now I had my hunger needs met, and I needed to make sure I had enough water. Now mind you, one of the things that I always carried with me, and it was non-negotiable, was a small canteen for water. My canteen could be put on a fire and it would boil water and everything would be fine, but I needed a larger source of water. So I set out to hollowing out a wood log that I could take down to the lake, get water, and carry it back. But mind you, it is a long walk to the lake, so I needed to make sure that when I got there and got water, I came back with enough. And that was just my plan for starters. My larger plan was that I was going to kill an animal, hollow out their stomach, and use their stomach to carry water back. Now, mind you, the entire time I'm out there, Benjamin is out there as well, and he's recording everything that I do. And I'll tell you, now listen, let me say this to you. The hardest part about this challenge was, as I was there hustling and bustling for everything, Benjamin had containers of water. He had everything that he needed. So the person right next to your camp had everything that they needed and everything that you needed. But technically, you were supposed to be out there on your own. Now, it was the second time that I went down to the lake to get water when I noticed something odd. And what I mean by something odd is, on the far side of the lake, it looked like a person was bending down, scooping up water and drinking it from their hands. It looked so much like a person that I waved my hands at them and screamed, "Hello." The figure looks up at me, turns, and walks back up into the woods. Now, to paint a picture for you, on that side of the lake, it's not flat land, it's a ridge where you walk straight up. And this person walks up that ridge like it's no problem. Me looking at that ridge that they walked up, I'm saying to myself, okay, dude, I could not do that at all. But nonetheless, now I'm scavenging around the lake to see what I can find. To make my life a little bit easier, I find one plastic bag, but it has a hole in it. But I can still make use of it. As I continue to scavenge, I come across an area where clearly people have been camping next to the lake, and I find an old antifreeze bottle. You know those big yellow antifreeze bottles? And I'm like, thank you, Jesus. This makes water carrying so much easier. So I fill it up with lake water and head on back to my camp. 2 days later, it's nighttime, probably 10 o'clock at night. That's the first time that both of us heard something weird. Because off in the distance, we start to hear this whooping sound. Whoop, 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 whoop. Now, pause right here and let me say this. I spent a lot of time in the wilderness. And I've been around Bigfoot. And I know what Bigfoot sounds like. That was Bigfoot. Now, typically, when I've been out and Bigfoot's been around, they haven't bothered me whatsoever. Honestly, they haven't. And so I didn't anticipate us having any problems whatsoever. Didn't scare me, didn't frighten me, nothing. But let me say this to you. When I finally went on a real hunt to get some real meat, all hell broke loose. Imagine the scene. I'm out hunting, walking along when I find some wild hog tracks, wild pigs. And I'm saying to myself, man, if I can take me a deer, a turkey, or a pig, this would be absolutely phenomenal. So now I'm following the prints, stalking this pig. When I come upon this little clearing, and in the clearing is no pig, it's a deer. And I'm saying to myself, man, if I can take this deer, not only will this meat go a long way, but its bladder will go a long way, its stomach will go a long way, and its hide will go a very long way. So I take the shot and drop this deer, throw him on my shoulders, and I carry him back. When I get back to the camp, I go through the process of cleaning them and preparing them and getting everything ready. And then I have me a phenomenal meal. We're both happy and relaxed and chilling. Then the sun goes down, and no sooner than it's dark outside, these Bigfoot start to lose their mind. Now, I'm not sure if it was because they were hunting the same animal as I was, or if they were just pissed off because now I was taking real resources from the area. But man, when I tell you they get the whooping, they get the howling, and trees get the falling over in the area, then the grunting starts. And I'm not sure if you ever heard a Bigfoot grunt, but it's not really a grunt, it's more of a huff. And it's loud and it's absolutely terrifying. That bud comes from where he is and comes into my shelter, which is way more sturdy than a tent. This goes on for the entire night, and we feel like we were surrounded by these things. And the following morning when the sun comes up, we both go out and take a look around, and there are prints all over the damn place. I'm talking about gigantic footprints. The stuff in his tent has been rummaged through. Stuff spewed all over the place. And the craziest thing about it was we didn't go to sleep. We were up, and we did not hear them rummaging in his tent. How they did that without us hearing it completely baffled us. Now, the next night, it only gets worse. And let me say this to you. I have listened to a lot of people do interviews where they talk about having Bigfoot encounters, and they are lying to you because they don't describe what these things do at all. Let me tell you what they do to you when they have you alone in the woods. They do run-bys. And I'm pretty sure you know what a drive-by is when somebody drive-bys a car and starts to shoot. They run by your camp. And it sounds like an elephant running past. Doom, 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 doom. Then they run from another direction. Doom, 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 doom. They do run-bys. And those run-bys throughout the night are the most terrifying thing that you will ever encounter. And the strangest, weirdest thing about the run-bys is they don't make any noise. They just run past, and you feel the ground shaking. Imagine you're sitting there in your shelter, and they are running triangles around the area you're in. It's not one of them, it's multiple running triangles. It gets to the point where Benjamin is so afraid that he wants to leave. And quite frankly, I'm scared out of my mind as well. So we get on the phone and we call Chester. And he tells Chester that he needs to pick us up. Now, mind you, we're supposed to be out here 40 days. We have been out here nowhere near 40 days. We are on like day 16, maybe day 17, and we're both ready to go. And Chester tells us that he's coming to get us. 1 day passes, no Chester. 2 days pass, nothing from Chester. On the third day, we call him back, and he finally answers the phone, And he says that he thought that we needed a few hours to think it over. And I'm telling him, listen, you son of a bitch, I don't need time to think anything over. There are monsters out here and they're going to kill us. If you don't get your ass up here and get us right now, if I make it out of here alive and I see you, I'm going to kill you. Then I hand the phone over to Bud, Benjamin, and Benjamin reiterates the exact same thing to him. Listen, another entire day passes before he calls Benjamin back and tells him that he's at the extract point where we came in at. And so we leave. And when we get there, do you know that this man is angry? He calls himself being pissed off and upset because according to him, we blew his opportunity at a big TV show. And he said, I'm not paying you the rest of the money. My exact words to him was, Chester, you know what? You can fuck off. You can keep your money and you can fuck off all the way directly to hell. My life has been full of challenges. My mother tried to abort me and the abortion failed. And ever since I was a kid, I've known I was meant to be here. I just didn't know why. My dog man encounter happened when I was 24 years old. I was in a bad headspace, so I went camping for the first time ever. It didn't look hard to me. I watched a bunch of YouTube videos, bought the equipment, and just went. Plan was to stay there 3 days. And however, after the second day, the woods quickly lost their appeal because I realized it held real monsters. I remember sitting out at night, watching the stars. It was amazing, coming to the understanding that the depression I was feeling had so much to do with what I thought life should be. The images shown on TV, social media, it was the fakeness of it all that was driving me mad. And that night, for the first time in 2 years, I actually slept in peace. Well, the next morning, I get up, open the cooler, and start to cook me some sausage and eggs. It was right after I'd eaten breakfast, I was chilling reading a book, I noticed something in the woods looking at me. It was well hidden, but I could clearly see an eyeball between the leaves looking at me. Now, I'm a virgin to the woods, and since it's so low to the ground, my mind tells me it's a raccoon. So I grab a couple of pieces of uncooked bacon out of the cooler and toss them in that direction. Then go back to read my book. Everything is cool, nothing spooky, nothing creepy. Dinner time comes around, I got some chicken and vegetables, and I notice the eyes again. Same spot. And again, it's not giving me any kind of freaky feeling. And so I continue to assume that it's just a small animal or a raccoon. And I say out loud, hey buddy, you're back, huh? This time I take a half of a chicken breast, toss it over there, and you can hear the movement through the brush as it moves to get it. I go to bed and sleep in peace. But early the next morning, I wake up to this grunting and breathing sound. It's right at sunrise, there's just a little light coming through the trees. I open a tent and it's a damn bear. It's there licking my iron skillet and I'm like, oh shit, it's a bear. I'm a virgin to the woods. I didn't even know we had bears in this area. I've never seen one before, so now I'm freaking out in that tent. And I remember reading in a book during high school that when bears were around, if you made noise, it would run the bear off. So now I crack open the tent. I'm there banging on my pot with a spoon. Well, I discovered that shit doesn't work because all it did was make the bear pay attention to me. So now I'm zipping the tent back up in a full panic, doing an inventory of what I got, and all I have is a small pocket knife. No firearm whatsoever. That's when all the negative thoughts started rushing back into my head saying, see, you're an idiot. You came out here to the woods with no gun, no nothing, and now you're about to be the dude on the news who was eaten by a freaking bear. Now my heart is racing, I'm sweating, I'm all up inside my head when I hear this growl. And again, I'ma say it, I'm a virgin to the outdoors, but even me being an idiot when it comes to being out in the woods, I knew immediately that this growl couldn't have come from any animal that people in the woods hear regularly. How did I know that? Because if people in the woods heard this type of growl on a regular basis, and then they decided to go into the woods anyway, it only meant that they were absolutely stupid and retarded, and I refuse to believe that everybody who goes into the woods is stupid or retarded. Therefore, in my mind, That growl had to come from something exceptional. So now I'm peeking out of the tent and the bear's on his hind legs standing up looking at that same spot in the woods where I had thrown the food. From my vantage point, it looked like the bear was challenging something. Understand, the bear's like 12 feet directly in front of my tent, on the other side of the fire pit. And whatever made that growl is on the other side of the bear. Well, I guess the bear was standing his ground if that's the thing that they do. Then I see what's in the bushes, decide to stand up. And from the angle that I'm on, which is a laying position, it's way bigger than a bear, and it has a head of a fox. How do I know? Because I have relived this in my mind 1,000 times, and I have searched for it extensively. That was a fox head, but it was 3 times bigger than the bear head. Now, I don't speak animal, but I'm telling you, if they were having a conversation, that bear was apologizing at that point in time because it puts its head down, drops back down on all fours, and takes off running. That fox creature looks at me, then you see it drop back down to the ground and tears off into the woods after the bear. Did it catch the bear? Hell yeah it did, because I could hear it and the bear in the distance going completely off. And in my mind, I just imagined the 2 of them were fighting over me as a meal. Remember earlier I told you I cut my trip short? Well, this is why, because Foxman was back there in the woods murderizing a bear. So now I'm scared out of my mind, but I want to pack some of my shit. I spent about $250 on camping gear and equipment. I get to the point where I'm trying to take down the tent, and you know how they have all those little stupid poles that go with the tent. Well, I'm struggling to get those poles loose. Then I make a decision. Hey man, you're being dumb as hell. This tent and every damn thing out here can stay here. All you need is your damn car keys. Now understand, I walked to the campsite that I was at, so back to the parking lot where my vehicle was, and I'm walking along as fast as possible, not wanting to run and attract any attention. But as I'm moving along, I hear movement behind me. When I turn around, I can see the big-headed fox man looking and peeking at me from behind trees. Now, for whatever reason, it didn't attack me. It was almost as if it was escorting me out of the wood. When I get back to the parking lot, I hop in my car and I'm in my vehicle cranking it up. I can still look over in the wood line and see Mr. Foxman peeking out at me. Now, I don't know what you're going to take from the Dogman encounter or the story, but I can tell you what I took away from my experience. And it was simple. Happiness is in me. I don't have to run to the woods to be happy. I just need to not care about the world, what people think I should be, or how I should dress, or how I should live in order to be happy. Happiness is a series of decisions. We choose to be happy and we choose to be unhappy. And speaking of decisions, I made a choice not to mess around in the woods ever again. This time it seemed like Mr. Foxman was on my side, but the next time he might be looking at me as dinner, and I'm not putting myself in a situation like that again. It makes no sense.
Blood-curdling, spine-chilling, heart-racing fear. You are now listening to Dark Waters Radio.
Hey, you ever get that feeling that something's just off, but you can't put your finger on it? Yeah, well, let me tell you about a night that turned that feeling into a full-blown nightmare. I was driving back from visiting my sister. It was late, and I was on this stretch of road that's pretty much just woods and the occasional gas station. So I pull into one of these gas stations to fill up and grab some coffee. It was one of those quick trip stations. The place looked new, but the outside was trashed. Garbage all over the parking lot. I get out of my car, and that's when I feel it. The air's heavy, like there's a storm coming, but the sky's clear. I shake it off and head inside. The guy behind the counter gives me a nod, and I grab a coffee and pay. As I'm walking back to my car, I hear it. A low growl, coming from the edge of the parking lot near the woods. Now, I wouldn't say that I froze. I have heard all these stories, and people say I froze with fear. That ain't what happened. I was confused at first. Like, did I just hear that? I'm standing there looking around. Like, what the hell is that? Then it happened again. This time, I knew without a doubt that I heard something growling. Even then, I didn't freeze, and I was like, nope. No, sir, I'm getting the hell out of here. The fast walk turned to a quick jog as I get in my car, lock the doors, and start the engine. That's when I see it, in my rearview mirror standing at the edge of the woods. This thing is big. I want to say it was a dog man, but I will just say this. I didn't stick around long enough to be able to tell for sure, but it was like 9 feet tall. It had these long arms that didn't look right, but its eyes, man, its eyes are glowing this eerie yellow. And its face, part human, part dog, it was twisted, like something out of a horror movie. I drove non-stop until I got home, my hands shaking the whole way. Check this out. I get home and I can't stop thinking about what I saw, so I go look up monster encounters. And there is this Dogman map. All these sightings. Then I find the Bigfoot map. And both of them have sightings within 10 miles of that gas station. Part of me wanted to investigate this stuff, so I start watching YouTube channels to see what people have found. Then I started seeing all the drama associated with the topic. Lost interest. There is no way I'm dealing with all that bullshit over a monster that people don't think exists. I watch stuff every now and then people look crazy arguing over if it's flesh and blood or if it's a demon. All I know as an eyewitness is I saw a monster. To me, a monster is a freaking monster. You get what I'm saying?
You're tuned to Dark Waters Radio, broadcasting from deep in the swamps of New Orleans, Louisiana. You've reached your late-night destination for paranormal encounters, cryptid tales, and all things strange and unexplained. Shadows gather as the midnight hour approaches. Join us as we delve into the dark recesses of the supernatural world. Hear unnerving accounts from those who have glimpsed what lies beyond the veil. We explore unsettling folklore, omens, rituals, and more, peculiarities that surface when the sun goes down. Ready yourself for chilling stories plucked from the mist-shrouded hollows and remote wilderness of worlds unknown. Tales guaranteed to make you think twice about what lurks out there in the darkness. You have entered our realm of mystery and imagination. Welcome to Dark Waters Radio, shining a light on that which hides in plain sight. Turn down the lights, settle in, and prepare to embark on a journey into the unexplained. Your guide is waiting. We're about to begin.
Just because you're by yourself doesn't mean that you're alone. That's what my grandpa told me when he left me in the tree stand while we were out deer hunting. Understand, I'm 13 years old. This is my first time out hunting, and it would be absolutely my last after what happened next. I watch as he walks off into the darkness. It's early in the morning, just before sunrise. I'm sitting there as the sun comes up, and it's the most amazing sight I've ever seen. Just to watch the woods come alive, squirrels, crows, rabbits, everything except for what we're hunting, which is deer. So I'm waiting and waiting, and this deer finally shows up, but it's at the edge of the tree line. Take aim, wait, and wait, and wait, but this deer is straight up chilling, will not move. Then I see 2 more deer pop up, but none of them are leaving the edge of the wood line, coming out to where I can get a clear shot. I wait another 4 or 5 minutes, get impatient, take a shot, and hit this deer in its neck, and it takes off running. Now, Grandpa had told me if I shoot and hit something to sit right there and wait because he would hear the shot and come to me. Imagine a scene. I'm sitting there waiting. 5 minutes pass, 10 minutes pass, and my grandfather finally shows up, excited out of his mind. I tell him I hit the deer in the neck, and he tells me how proud he is of me. Then I climb down from the tree, and we head off to track that deer. He's teaching me how to track. First off, we're looking for blood. We see some, but it's not a whole lot. The two of us move about 140 yards through the woods, and that's when we find where this deer stopped and bled out, but the deer is not there. I'm standing there asking my grandpa if he's absolutely sure that this is where the deer died, and he tells me yes, even shows me where it lay down in the grass. However, looking around, it's not there. I'm disappointed. Grandpa is confused, and we start to look for it, working in circles, walking around, trying to figure out what the hell happened to our deer. And that's when I see what looks like blood on one of the trees. I tell him what I see. He walks up, takes a look at it, and my grandpa flips all the way the hell out, telling us we need to leave. Remember, I'm 13 years old, never been in the woods. I'm asking him why, and he says, son, a dead deer does not drag himself up a tree. But I wanted to know exactly what was going on, so I'm not listening to him. I start walking up to the base of that tree, and then the tree begins to move. Pause right here for a moment. Let me explain to you by tree moving. I mean the roots of the tree begin to shake left and right. You can see the soil and dirt loosening around the roots. And that's when the hind ear of that deer falls down from the tree, landing less than 2 feet away from me. And I decide to look up. Lord Jesus, why did I do that? Because up there in that tree is this gigantic black mass. And then a head emerges out of it, looking down at me, and it looks like a freaking giant Doberman Pinscher on steroids. Listen, it has blood all over its snout, all over its eyes, and it's the most terrifying thing I have ever freaking seen. Naturally, I turn and begin sprinting away from the area. My grandfather damn near clotheslines me, trying to stop me, saying, son, I don't care what the hell you see in these woods, but you have to understand, only prey runs from a predator. If you run, that thing will chase us down and kill us. So the two of us fast walk out of the woods to his truck, hop in, he cranks it up, and we drive all the way home. When we finally get to his house, he's sitting in the driveway, hands glued to the steering wheel, wrists and arms shaking. He says, listen, I know you have questions about what it was, so I'm going to tell you what I know. That's when he goes on to tell me that his grandfather warned him about those things, and they are called bear wolves. The area that we were hunting in used to be overrun by them over 60 years ago, but he did not believe that they were still there. So it surprised and scared the hell out of him. Now, it's tough for a kid to come to the realization that the man that he looks up to is afraid. And it was really tough for me to come to the realization that my grandfather was afraid of anything, because I thought he was the toughest man on the planet. But that truly scared him. But the next day, Grandpa gets up early in the morning, shakes me in the bed and says, we're going hunting. I tell him no. He says, son, you have to face your fears. I tell him no, I don't have to face that. I will not be going back into the woods. And this is when I learned the true nature of a brave man, because my grandfather left out of that house and went hunting in those same woods and came back with a deer later that evening. And when I asked him why he would make a decision to do something like that after seeing what we saw, he told me that the difference between a coward and a brave man is very, very simple. Both of them feel fear. It's just that the brave man feels the fear and does it anyway. Listen, I still haven't been hunting again, and I am 25 years old, but that one life lesson has stuck with me. And I tend to face my fears. But there are some things in my mind that just don't need to be faced. And one of those things is Dogman.
I used to be a security guard at this little roadside amusement park in Texas. I want to be clear with you when I say this. Used to be as in, I quit after what I experienced. Imagine this place. You know, carnival rides that look like they're one bolt away from falling apart, greasy food stands, and games that are practically impossible to win. But hey, it was a job, and it paid the bills. Now the park closes at 10 p.m., but teenagers love to sneak in after hours, thinking they'd get some thrills. Mostly they play hide and seek. Teens being teens. My job was pretty much to kick them out. No big deal, right? Well, that's what I thought until that one night. It was a hot summer evening, the air thick with the smell of fried food and gasoline. I was doing my usual rounds, flashlight in hand, when I heard gasping and footsteps near the bumper cars. Gotcha, I mumbled to myself, grinning. I turned the corner, and sure enough, found a group of teens trying to hide behind the ticket booth. All right, the party's over. Time to go, I announced, shining my flashlight on their guilty faces. Man, you don't understand. We saw something, like a werewolf or something. One of the kids stammered, his eyes wide with fear. I chuckled. A werewolf? Seriously? This ain't a horror movie, dude. I started escorting them towards the exit, still chuckling to myself about the werewolf story. But as we passed the tilt-a-whirl, I felt it, the feeling of being watched. Now pause right here for a moment and let me say this. I have had this same felling many nights before. I have always taken it like there were kids, inside the park hiding, and they were watching me. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Something wasn't right. Then we all heard it. The sounds of metal squeaking, like it was under a heavy weight, echoing from the top of the fun house. We looked up and there it was. This creature perched on the roof, its eyes glowing red, like a freaking demon from a horror movie. It was jet black, making it appear as more of a silhouette than a body, but when it shines that light... Oh, buddy, it was a werewolf, exactly what they said was out there, long, muscular arms that ended in claws. But its face, man, its head was massive, almost cartoonish. Big wolf head, something out of a nightmare. For a moment, we all just stood there frozen in terror. Staring at, then. I'm not sure if it was motioning to jump towards us or if it was turning around. All I saw was it moving, and I took off. It was everyone for themselves. Not stopping until we were out of the park and past my car and out to the main road where there was light. Is everyone okay? I finally managed to ask, my voice shaky. Yeah, man. But what the hell was that? One of the kids replied, his eyes still wide with shock. Now here is the messed up part about it all. I asked them where they parked, and these crazy kids had parked on the backside of the park, hidden their car near the woods, and they were looking at me like I'm supposed to do something. I'm like, look, I get paid $11 an hour. If you think I'm finna go back in them woods with y'all, you are crazy. Y'all asses was never supposed to be in here in the first place. Guess what? Them kids started to walk up the road, said screw the car. As I watched them walk, realizing that the road to the right was all woods, I decided no, I can do that to them. So I got my pickup truck and told them hop in the back and we are gonna ride to the backside of the park around the fence. And I will take them to their car. So they hop in the back of the truck. We are speeding around the fence when one of them screams. I see it. Looking into the park, this thing is running along the main walkway in the park headed in our direction, so I veer off and make U-turn and head back to the road. I'm like, listen, I'm taking y'all home. Screw this. Get the car in the morning, so now I'm driving these kids home. Luckily, they all lived in the same area. When they are hopping out, they ask if I'm going back to the park. I tell them in the morning, when I turn in my uniform and quit. Sure enough, the next morning, when I go to quit, they are out there walking on the road flag. Me down for a ride. I drive them around the back side of the park to their car. When I get to the office, my boss is asking me why I was driving kids around, and he starts to fuss about the liability of doing it on the property. But little did he know I was about to quit. I listened to him rant and rave for a good 10 mins, calling me out my name and saying I'm stupid. And I'm like, listen, I quit. You can take this job and shove it up your ass. I rather work at the Love's gas station and deal with crazy truckers and drunks than deal with what you have going on out here.
Looking back, I suppose I should have known better than to buy that foreclosed house out in the middle of nowhere. But as a newly divorced man, I just wanted to get away. My parents offered for me to move back in with them. You see, my wife had gotten everything in the divorce settlement, and I was trying to make it on my own. The price was right, and the place had potential. Sure, it needed a lot of TLC. The wooden siding was weathered and paint chipped. The porch sagged a bit in the middle, and the inside was straight out of the 1960s with its faded floral wallpaper and ancient appliances. But it had good bones and several acres of land where I envisioned starting a little vegetable garden and maybe getting some chickens. A fixer-upper with room to grow was exactly what I needed after my chaotic life in the city. Move-in day rolled around, and let me ask you a question. Have you ever been overwhelmed with emotions? I mean like a roller coaster of emotions? That day I was excited, scared, worried, and optimistic all in one. It was emotionally draining. Thinking about starting over, feeling like a failure. My mind played tricks on me. Voices echoed in my head. It was utterly nerve-wracking. With every box I picked up came another thought, each more annoying than the other. The day I moved in was sunny and crisp, perfect for a fresh start. I just finished unpacking the last box in the cozy little kitchen when I heard a truck rumbling up the long gravel driveway. I peered out the window to see a battered blue pickup pulling up near the porch. An elderly man in jeans and a John Deere cap got out and waved in my direction. I opened the front door and stepped onto the creaky porch boards. "Howdy, neighbor," he called out cheerfully. "Name's Bert. I live just over yonder," he said, pointing west across a field. "Wanted to stop by and welcome you to the area." I introduced myself, and we chatted for a few minutes about the town and surrounding countryside. Bert seemed like a kindly old man, though with a tough look in his eyes, like he had been through some things in life, but you could tell he was happy to have a new neighbor. "You let me know if you need anything or have any trouble round here," he said with a tip of his cap as he headed back to his